suggest we do to increase unity and decrease divisiveness in America?
Well, that's a tough question.
I think that's a simple question. God.
There's a technique that I think ought to be instituted in schools, and probably junior high school and high school, where teachers are taught, or classes are taught in listening.
Public believes it. Just, I'm not through.
We get stuck in a way of thinking and we put blinders on.
And basically, I think the problem we have today is that we really don't listen to each other.
You didn't want me to ban China, which was heavily infected. You didn't want me to ban
all right, gentlemen,
Europe, which was heavily infected. You would have been much later, Joe.
Most of us are susceptible to an overconfidence bias. We tend to think that we know more than we actually do.
And we are unwilling, or maybe it's not even unwilling, maybe just, it doesn't even cross our minds to think about how someone else is living their life.
We've got set ideas about the world and our philosophies and what other people are probably up to, and we don't, I think we sometimes disregard information or what they have to say and replace it with what we think we want to hear.
Middle class
Wait a minute, regular order.
And over again.
Wait just
How
a
many
second.
times do we do this before we learn this?
Listen.
Something I like to do is talk to people and all different types of people and learn about them.
So listening classes are pretty much as you would adopt in therapy, is you have a coach that actually has people parrot back, repeat back what's said to them. It's amazing how difficult it is to do.
And then trying to imagine their experience.
But I think if people learned how to listen, really listen better to each other about anything, it would go a long way to making us more empathetic with each other, regardless of our points of view.
But it's trying to understand other human beings. And I've had the experience of doing that has softened my pointy edges toward people who I find difficult. It's helped me be more patient with them and maybe just to see more of the gray and less of the black and white.
I've honored you by allowing you to spout off here. And what you said was not right.
But I think we need to focus on humanity and being human and each other. And I think that's what we should put our energy toward.
How can we, when we're coming from similarly passionate viewpoints, how can we recognize that and shed some of that intrinsic bias a bit? How can we add humility to this?
This is a tough one for me. I'm basically against I don't like guns. But on the other hand, I think a Second Amendment right is very important.
There's obviously a reason why it started happening, keeps happening, and increasingly happens with more regularity in our country.
We need to get serious about understanding why this keeps happening.
Especially, to make sure that you don't get involved with a totalitarian government, or you institute policies where only the bad guys are left with guns. Right now, bad guys, most of them have guns, and they've gotten them all illegally. So you really can't take guns away from what I call law-abiding citizens unless you relax search and seizure laws and take them away from other people.
So number one, I absolutely think that more regulations on gun ownership and sales is an absolute must.
Beef up the background checks, beef up mental health systems.
Is this the moment to reform gun laws?
You know, it's easy to go to politics.
But it's important. It's at the heart of the issue.
I get that that's where the media likes to go.
Well, it's not. It's where many of the people we've talked to here like to go.
More about really understanding the patterns that governments and peoples have followed throughout the centuries, and just noticing, oh yes, look, there is this rhythm, there is this pattern that people follow, and what are the things that broke that pattern? What are the things that moved people in a better direction for a long period of time? What are the things that people keep struggling with? And noticing these things and having that more comprehensive understanding of history. I mean, that's what makes history useful.
But I'd also do what a lot of social institutions are doing. Like, for example, I used to do a lot of contract work with the departments of disability and vocation rehab. And what they did over the last 15 years that I was working, doing contract work with them, is they put automatic locks on all of their office doors and their front doors. And I think that would go a long way if you had an automatic lock system where as soon as you knew you had an intruder in the school, somebody in the principal's office could flip a switch and automatically lock every school door. And a lot of agencies and institutions that we already have are doing it, and it's quite effective.
Why does this only happen in your country? I really think that's what many people around the world just, they cannot fathom. Why only in America?
You got your political agenda.
No, it's honestly,
God love you.
Senator, it's not. I just want to understand.
There's a technique that I think ought to be instituted in schools, and probably junior high school and high school, where teachers are taught, or classes are taught in listening.
I agree. The listening and the thinking through and the discussing of different viewpoints is a really great idea. I am a proponent of teaching kids in high school how to be humans in general.
Our philosophies and what other people are probably up to, and we don't, I think we sometimes disregard information or what they have to say and replace it with what we think we want to hear.
Yep, I think that's huge. I think definitely people have their preset ideas about somebody who votes Democrat and somebody who votes Republican. This is their set view, this is their set view, and they're this way because that, and they're this way because that. And that's not actually how humans work. Humans are nuanced and complicated.
I think a Second Amendment right is very important, especially to make sure that you don't get involved with a totalitarian government, or you institute policies where only the bad guys are left with guns.
So what I think you're saying is that you aren't a fan of guns, but you value the Second Amendment, and that it's not going to make it harder for bad people to get those guns. My concern here with that idea, though, is, yeah, I'm sure that's very true in a lot of ways, but when it comes to school shootings, most, if not all of those guns were obtained legally by the shooter. Or they were taken from the home the shooter lived in, where the person who owned the gun owned it legally.
What the hell are you waiting for?
For it is a sin and a shame on us. We will always mourn losses without fixing the problem.
It's not even been 24 hours since the last mass shooting.
And I'm calling on all of you to have a sense of humanity, courage, decency. God knows we need action.
But I think we need to focus on humanity and being human and each other. And I think that's what we should put our energy toward.
Again, I agree. It'd be helpful if we could see each other as, human beings with, imperfections, and yet all worthy of some respect, and with all of us having at least something worthy to say. If we can edit out some of the extreme garbage.
What are the things that people keep struggling with? And noticing these things and having that more comprehensive understanding of history. I mean, that's what makes history useful.
Yeah, certainly agree with that the best predictor of the future is the past, which is history. And I do think that people are not careful studiers of history in a lot of respects. One of her comments was that if we should look back into the human history, we should be able to highlight some of the factors that have led to positive change. We know a lot of times those factors are wars and revolution. So I'm not sure that's where she wants to go. But in fact, that is the truth.
Would you think, just read an article from a different point of view, take 15 minutes here and there might be helpful?
Maybe it would be helpful to read more or be exposed to other sources of information. That depends on how open to being swayed you are.
Trying to be more empathetic and learning about other humans and letting it go.
If we work together, we can pull this country out of every mess it's in.